decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. There you go. We're off to a riveting start this morning.
Wow.
I haven't had a sip of coffee yet.
I was going to say like Drew, I was going to say like social media blank.
Yeah, social media blank.
Well, I mean,
exactly.
Drew, in your defense, I mean, we have a lot of different forms of social media. So you could have meant our Instagram, you could have meant our Twitter, you could have meant our Facebook, you know, as he's got us on True Social. I mean, like
MySpace, our
TikTok.
Friends. Don't forget about our high five page, guys. That's hot.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options there. So don't worry about it. Yes.
In any event, it's Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. We say good morning to Dave. We say good morning to Ezzy. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Nice to see you, gentlemen, on this Saturday morning. A doubleheader of IC action coming your way today. The IC Hockey Show right now, and then later tonight, just before 9 p.m. in the evening, the IC post-game show following the Jets and the Ottawa Senators. No better way to start your hockey day in Canada than with us three fellas. Gentlemen, it's good to see the both of you. How are things? How's everything in your life? It's been a whole day without seeing you. I hope everything is the same. I hope there haven't been any seismic changes that I'm not currently aware of.
I think we're doing pretty good. I think I can speak for Team Manouk and Team Ginsburg here at Dave's humble abode here in River Heights. I think we're doing good. And as you said, we're ready for a doubleheader this weekend. We're ready for today's show this morning. I realize we're going to focus on the Jets for the majority of this show, but like, is everything okay in Vancouver? Like, does anybody have a soul in that organization?
I tweeted about it this morning already. I tweeted about it yesterday. I tweeted about it this morning. I'm glad you brought it up, Ezzy. It's just unconscionable. It's unconscionable to treat another person like this. This is what the worst corporations in the world do. The ones that, where they lay off people by, not actually telling them, but the person goes to work and just like their key card access.
For the record, Google did that yesterday where they laid off. Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's what you're referencing, where if it was red, you're out. If it was green, you could go into
I'm pretty sure, boys, that's what Bell Media did in 2021, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
as he said, soulless corporations.
That's right. I mean, it's remarkable what they're doing in Vancouver, and the class that Bruce Boudreau has demonstrated in handling it is remarkable, because I'm not that. I mean, I wouldn't be that classy. At some point in time, I'd want to just burn the place to the ground.
And he is a wrestling fan, so you think he might want to drop a couple of
I'm sure that him.
You guys see when the media asked him about the media was talking about how he wasn't on the ice, and he had mentioned that his wife was texting him that he wasn't on the ice. Like, he was having fun with it. He was also getting emotional and getting teary. But you're right. You're absolutely right, Drew. Bruce Boudreau has handled this like in the best way possible.
It's remarkable how well he's handled it, and Jim Rutherford and Francisco Aquilini and Patrick Alvin and anybody else who claims or is proud to represent the Canucks organization should really take a deep, long look in the mirror, because they're absolutely embarrassing themselves. That right now, in my estimation, is the worst organization in the NHL. At least every other organization, there's worse teams in terms of on-ice performance, but every other organization at least has a plan and is executing a vision. Their vision might be, we're going to suck deliberately, but it's a vision. The Canucks have no vision, and then this is the way they handle a well-respected head coach. Even if it's not a well-respected head coach, even if it's a first-time head coach, you can't handle people this way. You don't think that the players on all the other teams are looking at this and saying, hell no, I'm not going to Vancouver? Hell no, if I have one other option, I'm taking that option? I mean, there's no question about it, how they are absolutely embarrassing themselves. If I was a fan of the Vancouver Canucks, I would be I would be ashamed to be giving them money on a regular basis.
That's when we had Kevin. Remember when we had Kevin Woodley on? That's what he talked about.
That's right. No matter
Andrew, that was before the whole Bruce Boudreau affair.
That's right.
That was just based on the play on the ice.
That's right. That was when there was just maybe a little bit of smoke about things, and then it's just gotten worse day by day. It's a remarkably bad organization. If you're Rick Tocchet, who's apparently next in line to be the coach, why the hell do you want to go there? You had the option of basically choosing a lot of different jobs this summer, and all of a sudden you're running to be in that organization. Why? I mean, that's last chance university kind of place.
I'd say it's because there's 32 NHL head coaching jobs.
Yeah, but you had your option you could have been a head coach in one of the other 31 teams.
Well, maybe Drew, maybe in his estimation, and we don't want to spend too much time on the Canucks. Like, who cares ultimately?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for Bruce Boudreau because I don't really care about the Vancouver Canucks. But I will say, like, you have to almost think it can't get any worse. And maybe he's thinking like it's almost like when someone's done something bad and they have to be on their best behavior for a certain period of time. So it's almost as if the Canucks are going to go the complete opposite way and have to be on their toes. I mean, who knows? I mean,
Dave, how many media scrums have you listened to since 2011? Have you ever heard a coach say, "I hope I see you guys tomorrow"?
Well, not only that,
this is surreal.
Not only that, it's like the organization's a joke. Like they won't allow some of the journalists.
Jeff Patterson, Matt Sakaris. I mean, these are guys who they're
Hall of Fame journalists. It's not like they're
just for everybody. Those guys used to be on TSN 1040 in Vancouver, and now they have the Sakaris and Price show.
They're basically
they do their own thing.
Yeah, they're doing what we're doing. Yeah. But
shout out to those guys because those guys are veterans and they're good guys.
But they're not. Basically, they weren't given access to do media availabilities. I don't know if they don't even have access to the arena. It's insane.
It's very hit or miss. It's piecemeal when they get access. There's no consistent access there, which is absolutely wild because these.
You know what? Let me tell you something about the NHL.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're so stupid they can't even get out of it. Like, you need all the coverage you can get. I don't care if you're in Canada. Like, look at our market. I mean, like, you need coverage. Coverage is important. You can only control the message so much. And like, I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to talk about the Canucks anymore. Who cares?
Fair enough. We just wanted to get it. I'm glad you brought it up, Ezzy, because I wanted to get it off. I was going to bring it up too.
I know when Drew needs to get something off of his chest. I've been friends with you long enough, so I had to tee you up on that one.
It just infuriates me that you can treat another human being like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, and that's just as simple as that. Never mind. Coaches are hired to get fired. They get paid handsomely to do the job, but you don't need to treat them this way on their way out. Just rip off the Band-Aid already and get it over with, because what you're doing is degrading to yourself. And Bruce Boudreau is going to come through this looking like a gentleman, while the rest of you buffoons in this terrible organization should really go do something with yourself that I can't say in mixed company. Moving on. Jets game tonight, big game against the Ottawa Senators, because this Jets team has not been playing well by and large this week. We know that the game against Arizona was on the positive side of the ledger. The game against Toronto and Montreal were on the negative side of the ledger because of the win-loss. The game against Montreal obviously was a disaster. They played better against Toronto. To me, this is actually an important game for the Jets. And you would look at the standings and you would say, it's not that important. Ottawa is, a middling team in the Eastern Conference. They're not going to be a playoff team. But from the Jets' perspective, to, prevent this a losing streak from getting to be a third game, which has only happened once so far this year, and that was right around Christmas time when the injury bug was really impacting the team. This team's healthy. You don't want to start losing 3 in a row when you haven't already done so. So I do think that there's a level of importance on this game that may otherwise not have been there, let's say, a week or 10 days ago.
Yep, you're 100% right. And it's not just the standings, even though, Dallas won their last game, so they're 2 points up. And that's going to happen for the majority of the season, guys, right? Like, there's the remainder of the season. There's lots of hockey left. So we're going to see flip-flopping going on in that Central Division with Dallas and Winnipeg, and Minnesota picked up some points. Colorado has picked up points. I believe they're 8 back with 2 games in hand. But it's not just the standings. It's because you want to get back to playing the type of hockey that you were playing 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's what it's about for me. Like, you're starting to see some old habits creep back in the Jets game from last year, right? And you're absolutely right. The Arizona game, even though they got the 2 points, that wasn't a Picasso. And then the game against Montreal was one of their weaker showings of the year. And yeah, you badly outplayed the Leafs for the majority of the game, especially in the first and the third periods. but you only had one goal to show for it. So they're struggling to score goals right now. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, what the line combinations are. I was talking about that earlier. Like the Jets were creating offense, but just not finishing, right, Dave? So, I mean, do you see Perfetti go back with Scheifele Wheeler? Do you see Connor Dubois Ehlers? Like, we'll have to wait and see here, but there's no doubt that, the Jets have only scored 4 goals in their last 3 games. And that's just not something that we're used to seeing, right? The Jets are a top 10 team. I don't know exactly where they are, but they're a top 10 offensive team in the NHL, regardless of where specifically they are in terms of goals for a game. So yeah, I agree. This is an important game. Ottawa lost to Pittsburgh last night. So, Ottawa played last night, and Ottawa, speaking of, teams that are struggling to score goals, they struggle to keep it out of their net, but they've got Josh Norris back, not Josh Norrisy. Josh Norris is back in the lineup for the Senators. He missed, I don't know how many games, Dave. He missed 30, but I mean, aside from
he's only played 7 on the year.
He's only played 7. Yeah. So when you're talking about the Senators, obviously, Brady Tkachuk is their top player. Timmy Stützle, second overall pick, and Josh Norris. He had his breakout year last year. How many goals did Norris have last year? I feel like he had like 30 something. He had a really good season. He's a good player, but I mean, this Senators team is almost as top heavy as they get, even though, Alex DeBrincat and Claude Giroux, they've been near point per game players, and they've got a talented back end. But the Jets, Dave, if they play similar to the way they did against the Leafs, they should beat the Senators at home, and I think they will. I mean, they need a bounce back game. They've got Philly tomorrow, so it's not, a situation where, you can rest a little bit, but yeah, they have to get back on the winning track for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those situations, like you said, Ezzy, they were, the Senators, I believe it was in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, they had to fly back while the Jets were comfortably in Ottawa, regardless. They played last night, but I'm pretty sure it was in Pittsburgh. And so you've got a situation where you're going to be able to try and take advantage of a Senators team, like you said, is that they're struggling this season, second worst team, I think, in their division. So they're not
25th in goals scored, Dave.
Yeah. So, and it's not a Senators team. They've got some talent, as you went over, but this is a game that you need a bounce back game if you're the Winnipeg Jets. That I shouldn't say bounce back, because the Montreal game you needed a bounce back game from. The Toronto game they played exceptionally well in that first period. They just couldn't score on Samsonov, and then of course the second period they weren't ready, and the Leafs capitalized on the Jets' mistakes. Maybe a little bit more than obviously with the top end talent that they have, that the Senators wouldn't be able to necessarily do, although they've got guys who can score, as you just pointed out. So it is an important game for Winnipeg because of the reasons you outlined, because you don't want to go into a 3-game losing streak, because you want to continue to add points, because look, you've given yourself a huge cushion. There's no question about that. You're a playoff team. There's no question about that, but it's also about, where you're going to be in the standings, and about, the teams that are coming behind you, right? And like you said, Ezzy, you got Minnesota, you got Colorado, you got Dallas. You want to stay in the mix. So you can't afford. I mean, it's funny, and this is kind of what we talked. Think about what we talked about on last Saturday's show before they'd even gone on the road trip. And we were talking about how most of these games were winnable.
Yeah.
Again, we said
against teams lower than you in the standings,
with the exception of Toronto, right? Toronto was 2 points ahead of the Jets going into that game, but with the exception of Toronto, all the teams were below the Jets. And as we've talked about, and as they've shown, this is a team that can do well against the teams below them in the standings, right? They were, I don't know, like 20-3 or something. Their record was very good against teams that were below them in the standings. So, I mean, and as he's right, there are some very interesting question marks with respect to this team. I mean, Dylan Sandberg has an illness, so he hasn't been available. Ville Heinola has been in his spot, because we thought Heinola might come out when he struggled, but Sandberg, I guess, isn't ready yet. Now you got Logan Stanley, who's on IR in a regular jersey. My mind with respect to Logan Stanley, unlike what they did with him last time, would be you put him on a conditioning stint, send him to the Moose for 3 games or whatever, because Moose have 2 games today. They have 2 games next week. He could play 4 games here in a week and then come back up.
And you're not going to throw him into a back-to-back situation on the road when you've lost 2 games in a row. Like, that's way too much. That's way too much pressure to put on him.
Right. But I mean, that's why I'm saying, like, to my mind, I would get him games he has to agree to it, of course, if he wants to go on an AHL condition, if the team wants to send him on a conditioning stint. But I would think that he'd be well served to do something like that. But yeah, there are question marks, right? And we know David Gustafsson is in non-contact, and we know that, who am I missing?
Mason Appleton.
Mason Appleton also non-contact on the road trip. But, he, according to Rick Bowness, is still a ways away. So, yeah, I mean, look, you've got some lineup question marks as to, is Carson Kuhlman going to remain a healthy scratch? Will the lines remain the same? I mean, I would imagine. you're gonna put Perfetti back into the spot beside Scheifele and Wheeler, and you're gonna have Ehlers back. I mean, that's how you were scoring. That's how you were producing. Yeah. And it's interesting because to me, Rick Bowness doesn't seem like a guy. I understand when you're wanting to discipline the team and you're not happy with the performances, but that's also the way you've had success. So I would be imagining that they'll end up going back that way.
Well, because it was evident to anybody who watched the game on Thursday night, as well as the Jets, played, and they played pretty decently. The Perfetti, Lowry, Manalainen line is just not a line that worked out well. There's just, Perfetti needs to be playing with guys with more skill. He needs to be playing with skill players who can, take advantage of his vision. And I think it was Matt Larkin on Daily Faceoff who wrote about Cole Perfetti, or was it Stephen Ellis? Maybe it was
Stephen Ellis.
Stephen Ellis on dailyfaceoff.com, our friends there, who wrote about Cole Perfetti and the vision that he demonstrates. Well, if he has that vision, and he does, we know that he does, then you have to play him with players who can take advantage of that vision, and that's not the role that Adam Lowry is best suited for, and that's not the role certainly that Saku Manalainen is best suited for. Perfetti needs to be playing with skill guys, with goal scorers who can really, who can use that vision and that talent to the best of their abilities.
If I had any money, I would put money down on Betway that Perfetti is going to go back into the top six, and then you're going to see Morgan Barron go down. And we talked about it. Morgan Barron looked good in the game against the last game against the Leafs. So.
He played well in that elevated
It's role. Not a slight on exactly. He can play in the top six, but when he goes to that third line, all due respect, Morgan Barron is more of a talented player than Saku Manalainen. So we talked about that, right? Rick Bowness has to figure these lines out. But the good thing is, like Dave said, you can bring in Carson Kuhlman. I mean, Sam Gagner is a guy that can play on the third line. He can play on the fourth line. Stenlund and Gustafsson, those guys are interchangeable at center on the fourth line. Those guys can also play wing, right? But you got to get some more production, right? I agree with Dave, 4 goals in the last 3 games. Okay, is that a blip? We'll see. I do think they're going to score some goals against the Senators tonight, but
you should.
The Senators, exactly. They're not exactly a defensive juggernaut, right? All due respect to the Sens, right? So this should be a game that, it's setting up to be, a bit of an offensive explosion for the Jets when you consider that, they've really been especially against the Leafs, Ilya Samsonov made some ridiculous saves. I think anybody watching that game, would have said the Jets could have easily had 3 or 4 goals, maybe even more. Right. Sure. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that Rick Bowness is going to go back to the lines that, were giving the Jets success, a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with him doing the experiment that he did. I mean, you've built up that cushion, and as much as you can experiment in practice, it doesn't really get the same effect as during a game. So I have no problem with the experimenting and with the attempt to see things, because really, what did you see? Well, you saw that Morgan Barron, at least in that one game against high-end competition, mind you, in that one game, didn't look out of place in an elevated role. What else did you see? Well, you saw that Perfetti needs to play with other players of his ilk. So you learned something from that experiment, but it's not to say that I would run back that experiment again, just because that, the line of Barron and Lowry and question mark had been successful by and large, whereas the line of Perfetti, Lowry, Manalainen in this instance just didn't have any success to speak of in that game. They just didn't look like they had any chemistry. They didn't look like they were playing off of each other. So you need to go back to the lines that were able to produce. And you look at the Ottawa Senators, and I mean, they have a very good power play. So you have to be a little bit wary of giving them too many man advantages, because although the Jets obviously have the second best penalty kill in the league, so that would be a strength against the strength. But you look at the Senators' goaltending, and take away Magnus Hellberg, who only played the one game, played well in that one game, mind you, but you take him out of the equation, and you have Talbot and Forsberg, and they each have a save percentage just over 900. 903 for Talbot, 902 for Forsberg. That's former Winnipeg Jets goaltender Anton Forsberg, I might add.
And by the way, Talbot played last night in Pittsburgh.
So you're likely to see Forsberg tonight, right? Then. I mean,
it's not a guarantee, but it pretty much is as close to a guarantee. I would expect to see the Jet that had the storied career here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, it's too bad the game's not in Winnipeg. I'm sure there would have been a video.
Did he play one game or 2 games?
I don't think he played a game. I think he was just on the taxi squad.
I thought he came in for one game. No.
Dave's
nodding. Dave's shaking his head, so I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he did. I think he was strictly a taxi squad.
That was the year in which Eric Comrie played for 3 different teams, right? He played for the Jets, he played for the Devils and Canucks.
Coyotes.
Was it Coyotes? Okay.
I think it was
Coyotes.
He was on the
Canucks for a bit.
Or was that I thought it was Red Wings.
Red Wings, yeah. He might have been on 4 teams. Was he on 4 teams, Dave?
No, he went to Arizona. Arizona claimed him. Then they traded him to Detroit. And then
I thought he went to New Jersey, though. I thought
he did.
He absolutely did because
he did.
Had him
he got his
couple
win
of years ago. He got his first career win.
Yeah. Right. No, and then anyway.
Actually, I don't know if it was his first career win.
It wasn't, but no, it wasn't. It wasn't.
He would win as Jets.
He basically he went to Arizona, never played. He went to I remember he played in Tucson for I think maybe conditioning, and then went to they traded him to Detroit, and then he was claimed back by the Jets, but he did play for New Jersey as well.
Okay, well, there in any event, you look at the goaltending tonight. Forsberg has a goals against average of 3.25. So again, a Jets team that has been struggling to get goals, at least in the last week or so. The Pittsburgh game, is a number of games ago now. So they need to be able to, and they need to do it, not by necessarily artistic merit. They need to get, the grindy goals, dirty goals, get in front of the net, and that's where you're going to get your traffic. I mean, the Senators shouldn't have anyone on their back end that should be able to handle Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, it's a talented back end in Ottawa, no question about it. But it's a young back end.
I was just going to say it's a group of defensemen that's still learning, right? Like, right. I think Jake Sanderson is having an underrated rookie year, but he's still very young. You're right. I mean, Thomas
Jacob Bernard Docker is very young still. I mean, these are young guys.
UND. Both guys actually went to UND, but it's not. I mean, it's young, it's inexperienced. There's a bright future ahead, but it's not a group of defensemen that you're gonna throw in. You're not gonna have a lot of all-stars coming out of that. You might in a few years, with Jake Sanderson, but I mean, it's look regardless of the Senators' defense, the Jets, if they play similar to the way they did against the Leafs. And that was, I would say, close to the Jets' A game, if not their A game, especially in that first period. The Jets should beat the Senators.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They're a better team. They're a better team, not just on paper. They're just a better team than the Senators. So if they play if they play well, again, they should win.
Well, and then you have to hope that they learned their lesson from Tuesday in Montreal, where they weren't ready to play, where they weren't in the game. They just weren't mentally there from the entirety of the 60 minutes, even after taking the 1-0 lead there on Tuesday against Montreal. So they know that if you are not ready to play, no matter who you're playing against, you can get bit by it. You can, these teams still have talent. The Ottawa Senators have talent up front.
Timmy Stützle is a guy, that I've liked him for a long time. Like, I think there's no doubt that, in that draft year, he's the most talented player. And, Brady Tkachuk, I love his game. And we talked about Josh Norris. This is only his 7th or 8th game. So, they've got talent, but I mean, it definitely, it starts to fade a little bit.
Yeah, when their depth is where they're lacking.
Exactly. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, you got to come to play to start. And that's been an issue for the Jets all year long is the first period. So, that, Rick Bowness and the coaching staff is going to be talking about that. So, it is a big game in terms of, the Jets wanting to end this losing streak here.
Exactly right. The Jets will hit the ice in Ottawa in about an hour's time. 10:30 Central Time is when the Jets morning skate will begin. The Senators morning skate will begin momentarily. Any worthwhile updates from Ottawa, we'll bring them to you here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. For now, though, we take our first break, and when we return, Manitoba Moose assistant coach Eric Dubois joins us on the program. The Moose in action this afternoon against the Texas Stars. We talk to Eric up next about the Moose, about today's game, about the recent road trip, everything to do with Manitoba Moose. Eric Dubois up next. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's a Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly, see lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning, awaiting the arrival of Moose assistant coach Eric Dubois on the program. Good timing for this tweet. This coming courtesy of our friends at Money Puck. In terms of expected goals, these are top expected goal lines with at least 200 minutes played together. Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, they're fourth in expected goals percentage so far this year, 61.5%, and even the Senators' second line of DeBrincat, Pinto, and Batherson, 55%. That puts them 18th overall in the NHL.
Well, that's great for Brass Bonanza, Drew.
Yes, there you go. Brass Bonanza.
Brass Bonanza has Stützle and Giroux in his hockey pool, so Brass Bonanza will be happy with a fantasy loss over a Jets win.
There you go. That's very reasonable, but it just goes to show you that the Senators team, as we talked about, very top heavy, but the talent is there. So the Jets have to pay attention to that. So, we don't yet know what the Jets lineup's going to be. We'll know that more in an hour. But if Dylan Samberg is healthy, I would expect he returns to the lineup ahead of Ville Heinola for tonight's game. That would be my expectation. I think that Ville Heinola
seems reasonable.
Has struggled for the last couple of games, and you just want to see him get some more consistency, and that's the problem. I don't think that for every good game that he has, he then maybe takes a half a step back in a subsequent game. I think the team obviously, it's sort of a chicken and egg situation in that he doesn't get enough consistent playing time to show that he can be a consistent player.
He needs to play games,
right? It's a bit of a difficult. It's a bit of a difficult situation that he's trapped in, by and large, because of his waiver exempt status. But I would expect that if healthy, Dylan Samberg would be back in the Jets lineup this morning or for this evening's game. We'll find out more in about an hour or so. But you can see the similarities between the Jets and the Senators in that the top heaviness of both teams, because the Jets are still, how long has it been since Adam Lowry last scored a goal? Is it something
19 games?
It's been a long, long time. And this is
19 games, I think.
Yeah. Well, 19 games without a goal is a long, long time.
Well, what have we talked about?
Lowry's going to score tonight. Put it on the board.
Well, your Ginsburg guarantees
Lowry's going to score a shorty tonight.
Yeah, your Ginsburg guarantees aren't worth anything.
That'd be his 10th ever short-handed goal, has he?
Well,
10th or 11th. I'm pretty sure he's right behind. Actually, no, he'd be his 10th. I think he's at 9, and that would put him one behind Blake Wheeler with 11.
Dave is the stat man. What do you do? Stay up all night reading these stats so you can have them at your fingertips?
No, not fingertips. This is brain power, Drew. I mean, I might be wrong, but who knows?
I'll
check.
you go.
I'll check.
Yeah, you'll check. I'm sure you will. In any event, that's just another level of concern for the Winnipeg Jets. Hellebuck or Riddick, you guys think tonight? They got a back-to-back situation. Usually the starter would always get the front end of the game. It would be unusual for the Jets to go Hellebuck.
I'm not going to pat myself on the back, Drew. Sorry, quick, but I'm right.
Okay, well, congratulations on knowing the shorthanded goal career totals. That is impressive. So back to my question, though, as we're waiting for Eric to join us, Hellebuck or Riddick tonight?
I would expect it to be Hellebuck for the reason that you just gave, Drew.
Yeah.
That usually we've seen Hellebuck in the first game of a back-to-back situation. Obviously, I don't think any of us would be surprised here if it was Riddick, but I think also you want Hellebuck to bounce back a little bit. I don't think he was bad at all in allowing those 3 goals against the Leafs. But yeah, my money, if I had any, would be on Bucky getting the start here against the Senators, and then you go with Riddick against Philly.
Yeah, I mean, by and large, that's usually how things will work. We'll see, obviously, in about an hour's time if that is different for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that reason would necessarily be, but this is a busy stretch, as we know. Thursday, it's 3 and 4, and then they play Tuesday and then Thursday. So the light is at the end of the tunnel. They're approaching it when it comes to getting that 10 days off. Right?
Actually, 11.
11 days off?
Yeah, because they have the last day in January. It's not I've circled every day on my calendar and wrote yippee-ki-yay, but I am a little bit excited for that 11-day break, boys.
This is the big circle that says Ezzy to save the marriage. Is that what it looks like on the calendar?
Yeah, let's just say that I'm going to have some work to do during those 11 days, guys. Like I've already started doing push-ups and sit-ups.
Why start now? It's been a long time since you've done those, so why start now? In any event, that's where things are at with the Winnipeg Jets so far this morning. This Jets team is, the trade deadline is, of course, approaching. Mike McIntyre, our buddy, wrote about it in today's paper about the need to bring Jonathan Toews back. Or that's
Mike, was that a love letter to Jonathan Toews? Is that what that was?
There was a columnist, expressing a opinion that he should.
No, I'm joking. I mean, I think we all agree Jonathan Toews isn't the same player that he once was. I don't think you're expecting him to do what he did for the Chicago Blackhawks when they were winning the Stanley Cups.
I would hope. But if you are expecting that, you're a little silly.
He turns 35 in April, and maybe I shouldn't speak because I turned 40 last July, not 45 yet. But look, if you only have to give up a second or third round pick to get Jonathan Toews, I think you definitely have to think about it at the very least if you're Chevy.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I don't think that can be your only move. So I think there does need to be additional moves beyond that, because Jonathan Toews, I mean, look, he's playing, in an elevated role for Chicago because they are a terrible team. If he played on the Jets, he wouldn't be playing a top 6 role. He'd be playing, on a checking line with Adam Lowry, things of that nature. So I think, that it's a good addition for a second or a third round pick because the price isn't significant, Dave. But I do think there needs to be something more than that. That can't be it. And then Chevy say, job done here.
No. You're just adding depth. And I mean, look, if you're going for it, you're going for it. And if anybody caught the chat that Kevin Cheveldayoff had with Bob McGowan and John Shannon, which is featured on illegalcurve.com, you can go watch it there after our show, of course. But he essentially kind of confirmed what we all expected, is that he's not really going to go big game hunting. So I know Scotty Billick wrote about Timo Meier and what he would be look like for the Jets club. Obviously, that'd be a long-term one. And despite the fact that he ripped Winnipeg for our Wi-Fi and all the other factors, I think he was one of those sharks who did that. So he'd have some amends to make here in Winnipeg. But it sounds like, from what Kevin Cheveldayoff said with those 2 veteran media guys, was the fact that it's the Jets. He's like, it's more, he's thinking along the Stastny lines. And he even mentioned Stastny, referenced Stastny in the conversation. So if you're Kevin, if you're a Jets fan, not that I think Jonathan Toews qualifies as big game hunting or big name hunting, as I call it, but I think that you're going to expect him to make complementary moves that are going to augment this team and not really impact it in a significant way, but adding that depth that that the team needs. Because quite frankly, they do need it. You need to have that additional scoring depth. You do need to have the ability to augment your team to ward off, injury. And look, Drew, Sam Gagner played an elevated role. He played first power play, played with Dylan Larkin on the first line last year in Detroit. and he still managed to come to Winnipeg. And even though sometimes he's a healthy scratch, he's contributed. So yeah, you're not going to be that same first line guy, first power play guy, but you can still contribute. And the reality for a guy like Taves, you'd hope, and again, I'm not pushing for it. I just, although let me tell you, he'd help in the faceoff circle. That alone is an area of concern for Winnipeg. But I just think like you're still going to be able to use him if needed, similar to Gagne, which is not a bad thing, because a guy who can maybe get a little bit streaky and score like we saw at the beginning of the year, maybe he gets reinvigorated. I know folks are thinking, are you going to have an Andrew Harris? The guy comes back to Winnipeg, leads his team to a championship. Who knows? But I mean, let me tell you, it'd make for a heck of a good storyline.
Obviously, no trade clauses, are a factor, in terms of getting people to come to Winnipeg, although they can be waived, as we've seen before with Paul Stastny. But I'm not sure why Chevy wouldn't be big game hunting at this point in the season, at this point, to try and really, give the Jets an extra level up to get
and also
even closer to the upper echelon.
Right. And also because a lot of teams right now are doing the exact same thing, right? Like you don't think Carolina and Boston.
Sure.
And
Carolina just lost Pacioretty. They just lost Pacioretty for the rest of the year.
You don't think the Golden Knights and the Avalanche and the Stars, they're, considering bringing in, additions before the trade deadline. I mean, you've got, probably 6 or 10 teams that you could say, definitively are buyers, right? So I think, Chevy's it's an arms race, right? Like it always is an arms race, especially in a year in the Western Conference when it's completely wide open like it is, right? So I do think that there's going to be more than one move. And it's interesting, right? Like it's fun for us to talk about this, Jonathan Taves, Timo Meier, the different players that the Jets could acquire. I mean, there's definitely some guys out there that we haven't mentioned, right? Like Paul Stastny back in 2018, right. That was a surprise. Nobody really saw that coming, right? So yeah, I would expect Chevy to be busy leading up to the trade deadline.
And I just want to jump in on the point that Hunter Bob made, because he says, if Chevy was big game hunting, do you think he would tell anyone? And sometimes it's about misdirection, right? So perhaps he goes and he talks to those guys, and people like me watch the podcast, watch the video and say, hey, Chevy is more inclined to kind of nibble around the edges and talk to someone who may not expect it. So you never know exactly what is going to happen with these guys. You never know the message they're trying to get out. And oftentimes it gets leaked by other GMs who are trying to increase prices. So we see, I mean, you always have to take everything with a bit of a grain of salt. And like I said, that's what we do. And it's the silly season already. And it was one of the other things that Kevin Cheveldayoff said was they're still having their amateur meetings. Next week, they're meeting with their pro scout. So the reality is, even though the media, our friends and ourselves as well, talk about this sort of thing, he said come January 1st, the reality is they're still looking at their amateur, notes, and they're still looking at their having the pro meetings. And so realistically, until the teams have all of that in place, you're not really I'm not saying that they won't make trades, but that stuff has to kind of fall into line before you're ready to do that. So likely, unless you see something that just jumps out at you. But my guess is that's why you're probably not going to see something for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That it does, the pro.
Can somebody make a trade? Like, when was the last time there was a trade in the NHL?
I think yesterday.
Yeah,
okay.
But not a significant one. I think we are now joined by Manitoba Moose assistant coach Eric Dubois. Eric, good morning. Can you hear us? Can you see us? How are things?
Yeah, no, everything's all right.
That's good. Unfortunately, you can see us. That's probably what you're thinking in the back of your head. It's like, I'd rather not see those Yetzes again. But
we'll turn our cameras off, Eric.
Don't worry.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. It is a game day, so we know how busy things are, but we do appreciate you carving out some time for us to join us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The Moose this afternoon against the Texas Stars. As of late, Eric, it's been some good and then some bad for the Moose. It seems like there's not an inability or just haven't been able to get on a roll where you're able to string a couple wins together, 2, 3, 4 wins together. From your perspective, how do you sort of get over that hill to try and get those a winning streak moving forward for this team?
Yeah, you're right. We've been playing for 500 for a while, and I think there's always something going on our game, whether it's a 5-on-5 missing and the special teams are doing really good, whether it's the goaltending not as strong as it was earlier. It seems like there's always something missing lately, and it prevents us from going on a roll. I think we're playing some good hockey. Obviously against Chicago, we're a little bit tired from that 12 days road trip, but on the road we had some good performance against Belleville. Even though we lost 6-1, I thought it was one of our best games. And against Toronto was the same thing. We were really strong. Didn't come up with a win, but that's what I'm saying. I feel like there's always something missing, whether it's a 5-on-5 special team or some lapses defensively. But yeah, we've been playing good hockey. We just need to put all those things together.
You know, Eric, you just mentioned defense, and you work primarily with the defensemen, and we have to ask you about Declan Chisholm. This is his third year with the Moose. It was recently announced that he's going to be going to the AHL All-Star Game. He's on pace for a career year. I believe he's up to 27 points now on the season. Just how nice has it been to see how he has developed and then, you know, get rewarded with a berth in the AHL All-Star Game?
Well, every year we set some standard or some things to improve. And when he joined us, it was all about offense. We asked him to become a good two-way defenseman, and again this year he's having more penalty kill than he ever had the last couple of years, and he's been doing really good blocking shots, good reads, good stick on the PK. So every year we try to implement something new from him, so he's as ready as he could be once he joins the Jets. And this year, I feel like offensively he's taking another step where every night he wants to make a game difference, and that's good. That means he's got a lot of confidence in him, and he's getting really, really close to becoming an everyday NHL player for sure.
Eric, sometimes we take for granted that guys are going to just come over here, especially younger players from, Europe, and just adapt. And there's so many things that these guys have to account for. It's not just playing the hockey and playing on a different size rink, but living in a different country and all that comes with that, especially at a young age, leaving your family. What kind of adjustment have you seen in Simon Lundmark, the 2019 second rounder for the Jets? I mean, he's in his second full campaign with the Moose. What are you seeing from him that you didn't see last year, or just improvements in general?
He's a very shy guy, first, and then when you come from another country, it's and you're shy. You're not an outgoing person. Sometimes you kind of stay in your corner. You're not willing to take your place into a dressing room or into a team. And I feel like that's all he was last year. It was just standing behind everybody. And obviously we had really 6 strong defensemen last year with Kovacevic, Sandberg, Ville, Jimmy. So he kind of, instead of forcing the door, he kind of stepped back and just watch and try to learn as much as he could. But this year it was an opening. I think he knew and understood how to being around our team, what he needed to do to take his place into our team. And big step from him this year. Last year, obviously playing in a small ice surface, also it was kind of a shock. It was kind of shocking for him knowing that he didn't have as much time, because he's got a lot of poise. There's not much urgency in his game sometimes. Where I got time, I could, I have time to recuperate that puck. Nobody's coming on me, and at times he got surprised or by a big hit last year. So coming in this year, he understood that part. And we're seeing a big improvement in his game. I think there's still some consistency to work with, but big step from year 1 to year 2.
Eric Dubois, Manitoba Moose assistant coach, is our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The Moose in action tonight, or this afternoon rather, against the Texas Stars. Eric, there's been a number of players that have played for the Moose this year that probably, or at the time this year, also played for the Winnipeg Jets. Jansen Harkins, Dominic Toninato, Christian Reichel. I can keep going down the list. These guys, when they go up to the NHL level and then they come back to the Manitoba Moose, how have they sort of taken their NHL experience and used it in the Moose dressing room to maybe better themselves and better their teammates?
Well, every year is different, depending on who goes up and who comes down, whether it's a young player. Sometimes young players will just come back down and just take their place, where an older player will use more his leadership. Like Dominic Toninato is a good example. He's a little bit older, been in the NHL for a while, came back, had some positive influence on the bench and the dressing room, where younger kids sometimes they just back to business. They want to go back up as quick as possible. So, yeah, we see it differently from different players. But Tony, so far this year, Stenlin earlier this year was very, very positive and a big addition to our team as far as leadership with the young kids. I thought Stenlin did a good job with Lambert earlier this year. So, yeah, it all depends who comes down. You know, the younger player usually they just take their place, where the older player will have a better, will have more influence in the dressing room.
Eric, you mentioned Ville Heinola earlier, and obviously you've had a big part in his development. And the last few games he's struggled. I'm sure that you've seen some of the mistakes that Heinola has made, and obviously, you know, that's going to come. I think you'd agree with any young defenseman who's trying to establish himself in as a regular NHL player. What do you think the key for him is to, you know, get his confidence back and start playing better? Because I think you'd agree. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of his skill set. I think the whole Jets organization thinks that he's going to have a really bright future with the team. But for you, just watching him the last 2 or 3 games, what do you think the key for him is to get back to playing like that defenseman that we've, you know, when he's playing at that top level, he's really in a thrill to watch.
Yeah, I think Ville, the biggest obstacle right now is the mental aspect, where he's very demanding on himself, and sometimes a hockey player we could be self-destructed. You know, we make a mistake, and then it's hard sometimes for some players to move on from that mistake, and then next shift you're not as ready as you should be. You know, you still dwell on the mistake or on the goal you got scored on, and Ville's got that tendency of he's missing a play, he's missing a pass, or he's getting scored to dwell on those play a little bit too long, you know. And the NHL, it comes too fast, you know, and you have to be ready mentally to play next shift. And I always tell my defensemen, you know, you got to have a selective memory. You know, you got to forget quick, move on. Next shift is more important than the last one, you know. But it's a lot easier for me to say that behind the bench than to actually do it on the ice. And I was just the same way when I was a player. Sometimes, you know, it took me a couple shifts. It took me something to happen to forget about that shift or that goal again. So I think that's it'll come with maturity for Ville. I think he's getting a lot better than he was earlier in his career. But I could see it still. You know, I watched the last game where he got scored 3 times, and I could tell that he was affected by the first and then the second, and so on and so on. So I think it's just the mental aspect of forgetting what happened and moving on quick to the next shift. You know?
So yay or nay to iPads on the bench for players, Eric?
Well, it sure doesn't help to forget about the mistake you made if you watch that play over and over again.
So, Eric, you had 174 penalty minutes one year for the Atlanta Knights in the IHL. So you're not afraid to be in the penalty box occasionally if you had to. Another player that, you know, you're now bringing along, Tyrell Bauer. I'd be remiss. Chad always wants to know about this young Jets prospect. He too isn't afraid to end up in the penalty box. It's not something we see very much of in hockey anymore, but he sure seems to be, even though he's a 20-year-old kid playing his first year of pro, he seems to acquit himself quite well when it comes to, and to be honest, I was at the game. I didn't think he needed to fight because I thought it was a clean hit in the neutral zone, but he's not going to back down, and he sure took on a big guy and handled himself quite well.
Yeah, no. I'd stay away from him if I was a player. But you don't see those type of player much anymore. But one thing, he understands the game. I think he was just trying to wake up our team last game by you know, getting in a fight, try to bring some energy to our bench, which we needed. You could tell our players were a little bit tired, you know, and a lack of energy from probably from a road trip. So that's one thing for a 20-year-old to understand momentum of a game, what's happening on the ice, why to do it, why not to do it. He's learning every day, but he sure is not afraid of anybody in our league. And and he knows everybody. That's one thing that if he gets in a fight, he won't get caught by surprise by the other player. He knows everything about everybody, whether they're lefty or righty, how they're doing, what they're doing. It seems like he's preparing himself really well for that. But the main thing for him is I try to improve his 5-on-5 play every day. He works hard during practice. He wants to become a better player, not just a fighter. And that's one thing we preach with him is we don't want you to become that player that we only use for that. The main focus for him this year was the 5-on-5. Eventually, bring the penalty kill up to standard with him. Understanding how to play on a PK at the pro level, but big improvement. He works hard. We're really satisfied with his improvement.
Eric Dubois, Manitoba Moose assistant coach, is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live this Saturday morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Eric, we talked about some players who were, with the Jets and now they're with the Moose. A couple guys who were with the Moose and now they're back in junior hockey. Chaz Lucius and Colin Lambert. Brad Lambert. Colin Lambert. Somebody that's completely separate. Brad Lambert. Sorry. What if you had to tell Jets fans, Moose fans about those guys? What sort of the words that come to mind? Obviously they're first year pros, at least in North America. They're learning the game a little bit. But what stood out to you the most about both of their games?
Well, obviously Brad was a skill level. He's got pro skill. Whether it's skate, good hands, good shot. That was obvious to us, the pro skill that he had. Now it's to play a more complete game, to play a more 5-on-5 game. There's a lot of skilled player will have a tendency to play more with themselves instead of using their teammates on the ice, reading different plays that they couldn't use, their teammates. So we thought that was one area where Brad could use more of a system. How do I play in a system team game? And we felt like playing junior would help him playing a more complete game with his teammates, playing the system, and things like that. And Chaz the same way. A really good hockey sense, could read plays. Could adapt really quick. We saw that earlier this year where the first game was a little bit tough, and then second game he adapted to the whoever we play against or whoever he play against, any player. So his hockey sense is really good. You could tell the way he was adapting. We just felt like the pace of the game also for him to gain confidence, become the players that he could become would be a lot easier to do it at the junior level. It's never easy for those guys to go back junior, but listen, I lived that situation with my son. He was drafted 3rd overall. They sent him back to junior because they said physically, especially with Torch training camp, physically playing a different position, like he was just starting to learn to play center. They felt like he needed to go back junior, have more ice time, gaining confidence. We want those offensive players at one point to become difference maker at the pro level. If we never give them a chance to become difference maker at any level, how can they suddenly become a difference maker at the NHL level? It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's not. And playing for us, they were just another player. They were not difference maker for us because they're only 18 and 19. That's how it is. So for us to send them back junior, I think it's the greatest thing we could have done for them. Hey, go back junior, try to be a difference maker, try to go win a championship, become the players that you should become when you're turned 23, 24, 25 years old. And then they'll know what it is to become a difference maker and on a championship team, And that's exactly what happened for my son. They sent him back junior, got traded to contender, played for Team Canada on the first line with Barzal and then Strome. at junior level, they made it all the way to the finals, so he had to be the difference maker for his team. But that's where you learn to do it. You don't learn that at the pro level. It's impossible.
And it's worked out pretty well for Pierre-Luc.
Yeah, no. But I think it'll be the same thing for Brad and Chaz.
And that's a perfect segue, Eric, because I was going to say this is a perfect opportunity for you to be a proud papa here, and we could talk a lot about Pierre-Luc because he's having an unbelievable season for the Jets. But we specifically wanted to mention earlier this week, it was announced that the Pierre-Luc Dubois Foundation was being launched, taking over from Vinny Lecavalier, who I imagine has had a big influence on Pierre-Luc's career. And we just wanted to ask how proud you are of your son for taking over that foundation and that initiative, because I believe he was involved with Vinny Lecavalier in the past with his when he was running the foundation. Just so how proud are you of Pierre-Luc Dubois? Pierre-Luc, your last name. How proud are you of Pierre-Luc, just with the foundation, and also just how great of a year he's having up with the Jets?
No, I am proud. I always say, pay attention when those players are around. Crosby was coming around at times. Rimouski, Brad Richer was another one that was a good friend with Vincent Lecavalier, so he was always around that tournament. And I was always saying, pay attention, see how they act, how they behave, and what they're trying to do. And for him, about 4 or 5 years ago, when Vincent stopped the foundation because he stopped playing, and he was trying to take care of his family. I think one of his sons is really big in golf also, and things like that. So, and he said, "Dad, I'd like to maybe to take over that foundation at one point," and so he reached out for the guys that were in charge of the foundation. And for him being around that tournament, he knew those people also. Play hockey with one of the son of those guys. So it's nice to see that he wants to be involved with minor hockey, young kids, underprivileged kid that would like to play hockey but can't afford, because just like me, guys, that hockey is so expensive nowadays. You understand sometimes why kids or family choose other sports, but it is a great sport. And PL was, hey, Dad, if I could help any kids, let's do it. So yeah, of course, I'm really proud of that. See my daughter getting involved with him also. She's part of the the CA of that foundation. So it's nice to see them together, doing things together, and exchanging ideas about what to do or what they could do. So it's always nice. And as far as this season, obviously he wants to get better every year, and this year I think he took another step, so that's nice to see.
Okay, Eric, there's a lot of giving this weekend for the Moose, hopefully just in terms of the off ice and what they're giving away. They're going to be giving away hats to all the fans who come, the 2000s, although some of your players, even though they were born in the early 2000s, they didn't do too well in the trivia game. But I have a bigger question about the bobblehead. Jimmy Olney. First of all, do you think that looks like Jimmy? And second of all, and on a serious note, how nice is it to have him back? I know he's been around the team, but he's skating again. We originally thought it was going to be a Christmas return. Now it looks like sometime next month, maybe late this month, or I saw him we talked a little bit. He's not 100% certain, but just to, the fact that your team, as young as they are, and it's one thing we don't really talk about, but the Moose are a young team. You guys are still going along, and you're doing it without such an integral part of your team like Jimmy Olney. So what will it mean to you to have him back on the ice, providing that kind of element? Because really he does bring an edge, he's almost like a sheriff out there. He makes sure that nothing really happens. And especially with a younger team, that's kind of important.
You're absolutely right. He's our sheriff, and him being around the team now practicing, you could see a little bit the intensity of practice going up a little bit, especially when we do those 5-on-5 drills. He's very physical. He wants to get himself ready to play, so he keeps everybody on the edge. But big influence on the bench when he plays. But you could tell he's getting himself ready. One of those games that we lost on the road, I could tell he was not happy after the game. You know, he let a few players know also as he's right around the corner. You know, but he's got that ability. A little bit like I think Taro's learning how to do that, and I think Jimmy's helping him a lot as far as reading those situations. But Jimmy had that ability of teams falling asleep, either to try to wake them up on the bench or you do something on the ice to bring everybody to the battle, and that's what good leaders and player like him are so valuable to our team, where they recognize situation and they bring everybody up to the level of emotion that you need to be successful on the ice. So, yeah, to see him that he's right around the corner, it's a big plus for him, for us. It's a big plus in the dressing room too. You could tell before practice. Now he's teasing Leon. You know, he's mocking those guys a little bit, try to wake them up a little bit. So it'll be a big plus for us. We want to make sure that he's ready when he comes back. We don't want to have to do any step back, but he's working hard, and he'll be in pretty soon.
Eric Dubois, the Manitoba Moose assistant coach. The Moose in action this afternoon against the Texas Stars. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. Good luck this afternoon, and we'll do it again real soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, guys.
Take care, Eric. Thanks so
Coach.
much. There he goes, Eric Dubois, Manitoba Moose assistant coach, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. When we come back, we'll talk about that interview. We'll talk more about the Jets, much more to come. John Mattis at the bottom of the hour to talk about his article on Kyle Connor. It's a Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Don't go anywhere. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. As I mentioned at the bottom of the hour, John Mattis, national hockey writer for The Score, is going to join us. Did a great profile, great piece on Kyle Connor. You can check that out. I'm sure it's on illegalcurve.com. You can just Google it. I'm sure you can find it there as well. Big thanks to Eric Dubois for joining us. So well-spoken, so articulate, so honest. You really appreciate that from an interview, and that is what we got from Eric Dubois this morning. So kudos to you, Dave M, for arranging that. Big thanks to the Moose team there for making it come to reality. But really nice to hear from him, a guy that you might not, people don't necessarily hear from all that often. Given he's the assistant coach and he's the assistant coach for the Moose, so you may not necessarily hear from him. But this was a great opportunity to do so, and he was certainly stepped up to the game with a great conversation today.
Absolutely. I love hearing him talk about Pierre-Luc as well. I mean, I'm sure that, he could talk longer about Pierre-Luc's season, but, you could see how proud he was in the way he was talking about him and his daughter as well, being involved with the Pierre-Luc Dubois Foundation, but also, really interesting to hear his comments on the team this year. And Dave just mentioned it, right? It is a young team, and, they've had, I think, even more movement up and down between the Jets and the Moose than in previous years, right, guys? Because we know it's a developmental league, and we know the Moose are a developmental team. But this year, especially when the Jets had 7 or 8 guys injured, I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, not many people, for example, thought Kevin Stenlund would be playing as many games with the Jets this year, and that's with all due respect to Stenlund, because he deserves to be in the lineup, right now. But I don't know if a lot of people back in, let's say, late September, early October, Dave, thought Jansen Harkins would play more games with the Moose than with the Jets, right? So there's been more movement than normal. And also, Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, it's not really common that, you have 2 guys start the season with the Moose and then go back to the WHL, right? So, I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. And obviously, they've got some tough games coming up. Texas is leading the division. And as you know, the Toronto Marlies are also leading the division. So, these are big games for the Moose. They want to pick up some victories here.
Yeah, and I really like those comments that he made. And one of the things, as Drew said, you get a lot of insight and a lot of honesty when you speak with Eric Dubois. And one of the things that, as I've talked about, one of the things that I like that the Moose do is that they make the assistant coaches available to that. Part of it, I think, is that the head coach doesn't necessarily want to talk to me that much, but regardless,
Nuke's here again.
Yeah, it is.
Somebody else do this interview.
It's actually the opposite. I've told people this, that we know, obviously, but some people that that don't really follow this. But
you're not just going up to random strangers and telling them.
No,
this?
But when Dave isn't at a Moose game, Zinger actually is like, "What's going on here? Where's Minuk?" It's like something is not right if Dave Minuk is not at Canada Life Center. So Dave is just as important to the Moose as basically anything.
I don't know if I go that far. I appreciate that. Anyways, point is that I liked his comments because, again, it provides a level of insight, right? Of what, and he spoke about it with respect to Pierre-Luc and the idea of going back to the NHL. And look, if the Jets can get one of those 2 or 2 of those 2 to develop the way Pierre-Luc Dubois has developed, that will be a huge win for the organization. But I think it was, I personally was of the opinion, I thought maybe Chaz Lucius's World Juniors might influence the team, and because he obviously had a very good tournament. So you thought maybe that would influence them to keep him, but I think it was the right decision to give them both that opportunity to play. Chaz Lucius, one, because Brad Lambert, even though he's played pro for a couple of years now, he's been inconsistent, and I think it'll give him an opportunity to kind of really gain traction and gain confidence, which is something that isn't easy to achieve at the pro level, especially for guys who are pure goal scorers or can be very good goal scorers. And for Chaz Lucius, look, he was injured a lot in Minnesota. He only played part of 1 year there. So he didn't have a lot of hockey games, and he was injured, of course, prior to his draft year, right? So from his perspective, the opportunity to go up against, junior guys, I think it'll be really beneficial. So again, I'm not saying it as eloquently as Eric did, but I do think it is an important distinction that he made about what those guys will gain, the opportunity to dominate and really contribute and push, Portland and Seattle, 2 best teams in the West in the WHL. So it's going to be a good chance for them, eventually to go up against the Ice. And we think the Ice, Red Deer's a very good team too. The Ice are playing Moose.
The Ice are in the East Division, just so you know. Dave said the 2 best teams in the West. So
Yeah.
we're not saying that the Ice aren't one of the best
No,
teams,
no, no,
but
no.
some people forget
Best-
that because it's the Western Hockey League,
Yeah.
Ice, the Wheat Kings, they're in the East Division.
Yes.
The Wheat Kings are the Ice are the easternmost team in the Western
WHL,
in the
that's
Western Hockey League.
So anyway, so you've got them, and the Ice are hosting the Moose Jaw Warriors tonight. I think that's an 8:05 start, and Moose Jaw's fourth place team in the East. Has he? But anyways, it'll be a good opportunity for those guys to go up to the to go down to junior and really dominate.
Well, you know what I thought that was so interesting that Eric said, because you said it with reference to Lucius and Lambert, not Colin Lambert. I don't know where I came up with that one. That was an interesting one on my part. But also about Ville Heinola, just the importance of confidence.
Yep.
And the importance of being able to flush the previous play and stay in the moment of the game, and how difficult that is. And I mean, I'm sure it's something that you only can really learn, I think, with time and experience, because you're a young player, you're wanting to make an impact, you're wanting to make a contribution, and then all of a sudden your contribution is on the negative side and not on the positive side. It can't be easy just to brush that off. And that is what comes with, I think, playing many games and learning how to, in the midst of the game, flush it, learn about it. I think after the game is where you can do that study. So I do understand this whole,
but you still have to flush it, right? Like that's the whole thing, right? Like you have to,
you don't let it linger from game to game.
Exactly. And that's kind of what you've seen, I think, a little bit with Heinola. He was much better against the Leafs. I mean, there's no doubt that, the game
hard
against
to be
the
much
Habs
worse than he was against the Habs.
Yeah, fair enough. But you're right. And you have to remind yourself that he's 21 years old, right? You have to remind yourself that Brad Lambert is 18 years old and Chaz Lucius is 19 years old. Like these guys, have a lot of time to still establish themselves both at the AHL and the NHL level, right? Like we don't expect Lucius and Lambert to spend a lot of time at the AHL level. These are really skilled, both first round picks, right? But I think Heinola will be fine. But I mean, he's definitely a guy, if he does stay in the lineup, and right now it looks like he is, because Dylan Sandberg is dealing with a flu or illness, whatever it is.
We should know more in the next 15 or so
but
minutes.
Regardless, Drew, if Heinola plays against Ottawa or if he plays against Philly or both, whatever, I think that is a key for him, just to play his game and forget about the fact that the last few games haven't been his best. All the skill is there, and I think he will be better. I think the most important thing for him right now is to stay in the lineup, even though he's making mistakes in games.
Well, and that goes back to something that Rick Bowness said earlier in the year, Dave, is that the NHL now, it used to not be this way, but given the influx of young talent, the NHL is to some degree also a developmental league. It's not that what it once was, where you came fully cooked and that's when you started playing at the NHL level. Is that the NHL does allow for those opportunities, because just the nature of a salary cap league is you can't have everybody coming in that's 100% ready to go. Now you want them pretty damn close to ready to go. You don't want them to be 50-50 players for the most part, but there is elements of development that happens throughout an NHL season as well for young players.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't want it to be like the Moose, where you have a significant portion of your team to be young and developing or learning, or if you are, like a Montreal or other, some other organizations, if you're doing that, or Ottawa, for example, you may have some veterans interspersed, but for the most part, you're allowing them. But you know what your team is, right? Yeah. If you're a championship caliber team, you're not doing that. You're not allowing development. Look, do I think the Detroit Red Wings model is a thing of the past? Maybe. I think it might be. It may be. I mean, I think the problem, and I've said this too many times to count, but I think because we live in an instant gratification society, nobody has patience for development. And I think it's a mistake, quite frankly. And I think what ends up happening is you get a guy, let's call it a Tage Thompson, right? And that was a reason. And the Blues are making that trade every day of the week because they want the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this a million times. You're willing to give up a guy who's going to end up scoring, maybe 60 goals for the Buffalo Sabres.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying they gave up on him. I mean, that's not necessarily the best example that I could use, just jump to my head. But I mean, look, you're willing, but you have to be prepared, right? And I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's the hesitation for the Jets with Logan Stanley. I think that's the reason why they've hung on to Logan Stanley the way they have, because I think they're afraid if they make that kind of a quote hasty decision that he's going to become Zdeno Chara, right? And I think like so there's that it's kind of like on both sides of the pendulum, but ultimately, yeah, I mean I think that there is, for a guy like Ville Heinola, sometimes, and I don't know what it is, and I'm not saying he's Sami Niku because he's not, and I it's amazing how people can rip on but like I just think we've got some little ones coming into the frame, I think. But
hi.
Is that Aaron?
No, it's Sam.
Sam.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going, Sam?
How's it going, buddy? Good. I'm gonna go deal with a quick TV issue. I'll be right back. You guys keep going.
Let's take Drew out of the chat, and it is the Dave and Ezzy experience. Sweet.
Yeah, you got to fix that TV. I mean, Sam's got to watch his Paw Patrol.
Yeah, seriously. I know.
I don't know if Sam watches Paw Patrol. He might watch something else, but Paw Patrol is very big with the kids these days, Dave.
I agree, Ezzy, but I will say, just to be clear, Turd, I'm not suggesting that Logan Stanley is going to become Zdeno Chara or anything like that.
I don't know why you called me a turd.
Yeah, well, not you, Ezzy. I never said you. You weren't the one who was questioning.
Oh, I thought you were calling me a turd.
No, would never call. I'd call Drew a turd, especially when he's not listening. But you never. Anywho, the point is that the teams will often do that, and they'll make that decision right as that. They'll like, okay, well, we don't want to want to make a mistake. We don't want to lose a player who's going to potentially become this, and that I think that's that risk aversion that the Jets might have in terms of a guy like Logan Stanley. I mean, like I said, I think you can replace him, and I don't think it would be astronomical, but you put a lot of development into him. And so that's why I think as organizations are hesitant, especially with like a guy like Ville Heinola, who unfortunately for him, he's waiver exempt this year. He's waiver exempt next year. And so because of that, sorry, I was talking about Ville Heinola and his body language and how it was similar to Niku. Sometimes you see that a little bit with those guys, and they just wear it on their sleeves better than, or more, not better, but more than other guys who can maybe, they're internalizing it. They're going to go back and watch the iPad, but they visually they don't have the same reaction viscerally, right? And so I think that's why it looks like, okay, well, you can see it's impacting him. And Eric Dubois said that, right? He could see in Ville watching it on TV how it was impacting him.
Yeah, I know you want to talk about Ville Heinola. I'm more worried about, do you think Drew's actually fixing the TV problem? I'm not sure if, Drew knows anything beyond turning the TV off.
Well, he obviously just hit the reset button.
Yeah, exactly. Like he doesn't know what he's doing, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if
he's back. Let's find out.
Okay, so how's the TV, Drew?
The TV's fine. My wife and daughter are out, so Sam is upstairs doing his own thing.
Oh yeah, you got to make sure that Sam has his show. What is he watching? Is Sam too old for Paw Patrol, or does he still watch that?
No, he's definitely too old for Paw Patrol. He wanted to stop watching whatever show he was watching and start playing his Nintendo Switch. So that's what he's currently golfing upstairs using his Nintendo Switch.
The other question I was going to ask is, shouldn't Sam be watching us?
I'm sure he was watching us before. I'm sure that's what was happening before. He was really enjoying our in-depth conversation. He did say he thought Eric Dubois was very articulate and well-spoken. I thought that was impressive because he's 5 and he said the word articulate and well-spoken. But in any event, no.
Didn't Sam also really like Morgan Barron's game against the Leafs?
He did. He thought he was really intrigued by him in the top 6 role, but he wants to see more of Barron and Lowry together because of the impact that line has had. That pairing has had together.
Can you imagine if we had our kids on the show and we actually asked them questions about the Jets? It would be very funny.
It would be amusing. It definitely would be. I don't think that we would get necessarily. Actually, they'd probably be at least as equally as insightful as we are. Now that I come to think of it,
like their attention spans would be very similar to mine.
Well, there you go. Here, Lisa says my son is 11 and loves watching your show. So thank you, Lisa. We appreciate
awesome.
that. That's tremendous. Yeah, my kids have no interest in our.
Shout out to little Danko.
Little Danko, as he.
I don't know Lisa's son's.
I know you don't know Lisa's son's name. That's okay.
Lisa's a winner of the IC merch, which is coming her way soon.
Yes, coming her way soon. And
I did a lot of deliveries already. I know
you're doing a great job.
Well, you're gonna have to get something for Junior as well.
Happy belated birthday to Linda Trudeau, who was a past winner. It was her birthday on Monday.
There you go. Congratulations to Linda, or happy birthday to Linda as well. In any event, happy birthday to everybody and all your beautiful children and whomever you are. We'll see if Sam rejoins us at some point during this morning's broadcast.
I don't know, Drew. If he's playing Wii golf, I think that's way better than hanging out with his dad in the electrical room.
He's pretty good with the bowling as well. He's really got into it. It was the first video game system that we bought the kids. We bought it over the holidays, and they've never played video games before. Sam is into it. Aaron is into it probably a little bit less. I haven't had a video game system, I think, since I had a Sega Genesis. So this would be, it's been a long, long time since I I was never a gamer. I'm still not much of a gamer. I haven't had.
You were a big Snake guy though on your Nokia phone.
That's true. I was a big Snake guy.
I remember when we first were getting our phones. Drew was one of the first people that was like on level 10 of Snake or something like that back in the day. There's people that are in their 20s that have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, by the way.
That was before smartphones, you had the game that was called Snake, which was, it was a stupid
I'm going to download that on my phone right now.
You probably, I'm sure you can. I'm sure it's somewhere in the App Store or something, but it was a very
I'll stop playing Fortnite and I'll start playing that.
Do you play Fortnite, Dave?
Not anymore. I stopped.
Did
I was
you
playing
used
for a while,
to?
though. Oh, yeah. I played for
Nerd alert.
Solid year. I'm not going to say I smoked Patrick Laine once in a game, but let's just say.
Did you?
No.
Oh, okay. I
did get a lot of victories, though. Do you want me to play some of my kills? I got some kills here.
No, I know nothing about it aside from the fact that
you know what's funny? I stayed away from. I didn't really get interested, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'll give this a whirl. Everybody's talking about it. It's annoying, and then sure enough, I started playing, and actually it was fun.
The only games I liked is the sports games. Those were, when I played video games, I could never get into. I was never a Zelda guy. I was never a.
You were a big Joe Madden football guy, right? Or pardon me, Joe Montana.
Yeah, well, John Madden is who you're talking.
I know.
About.
I meant to say John. Remember Joe?
Is he related to Colin Lambert?
I think they're brothers. Again, I mean, I haven't played anything since Sega Genesis. Once there were too many buttons, I was out. There's like I can handle 3 buttons.
There's all my kills right there.
Well, you have them very, very handy, Dave. That's impressive.
I went to the Xbox app. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Well,
I'm not a boomer.
Mortal Kombat was one of the best games ever for Sega Genesis, for sure.
Well, remember when like Mortal Kombat? Remember when like Mortal Kombat was like restricted because it was too violent, and now I think they show this like that kind of violence during daytime TV, like it's on kids cartoons. They're ripping out other characters' hearts and like eating them or whatever the hell.
I will say though, it was quite
Dave, I think you should finish him.
Yeah, I think I'm going to as well. I will say though, the adjustment from the Nintendo AB to all like using buttons down here, but eventually you figure it out.
You gotta like dislocate fingers to play these games. That's too much for me. I'm not on board with that.
All right. Let's move on to something you are on board with. Like talking about
hockey. That? I'm not even sure what we're on board with anymore. I don't know what you guys were talking about. I had to go put on the Nintendo
Jet Senators tonight at 6 o'clock Central.
Oh, okay. We were talking about body language and Hey Nola, and now we can move on to a different subject. Drew, I mean, what is the show plan call for us to talk about now?
There's a show plan. First, we got to make the show plan before we can talk about the show plan, Dave. Look, we were talking about the same thing we talked about sort of at the start of the show, that this is, this is an important game tonight because it's the back-to-back situation. So if you lose tonight, or if you don't put forth the appropriate effort tonight, and then you take you take an L on that side of the column, well, then to bounce back, against the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow will be especially difficult, because we know how difficult it is to win in back-to-back situations.
And you're not going to be able to see your own highlights on the iPad, because Torts made sure that the opposing team doesn't have iPads either. So it's going to be really tough.
There are no iPads for sale in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, state of Pennsylvania actually, Drew. No, all the iPads.
Pittsburgh went the opposite way.
They put them on trucks and they got them out of the entire state.
That's right.
Pittsburgh would do the opposite. If Philly was doing one thing, Pittsburgh would do the opposite.
True. It would be exactly. It's only in Philadelphia County that you can't get any iPads right now. But because we talked about it. Look, the Colorado Avalanche have won 4 games in a row. They're back in a playoff spot now, and they have games in hand. So you knew that
they were back, and Bowen Byram is coming back. So they're getting close to health.
And Cale McCarr,
full health.
And Cale McCarr is going to be back. There was some thought he was going to play yesterday. He didn't, but he's
he only missed a few games though.
I know, but he's but they're getting healthier, and they're getting back to where they need to be.
I mean, we thought the Jets were missing a lot of money in salary. The Avalanche, I think the Jets had $25 million out at one point. Yeah. The Avs had 26. So those two teams
the big one is Captain Gabe, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like you talk about trade deadline acquisitions. Landeskog obviously had surgery. He's been out the whole season. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about the Avalanche and whether or not they'll make a move, which I do think they'll make at least 1 or 2 moves before the trade deadline. But how amazing is it to get your captain back before the trade deadline, right? The Avalanche. I think we all agree that the Avalanche are going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, well, they have a tough matchup tonight against the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken is, of course, still playing great hockey, but let's say the Jets. Let's say the Jets don't take care of business against the Ottawa Senators, and say the Avalanche go into Seattle and upset the Kraken. Well, all of a sudden, the Avs are only 6 points behind the Jets, and they still have 2 games in hand. So, I mean, Colorado is, they were in the rear view mirror, further back in it, but they're getting closer, as we all expected. This isn't to say, there's still a team between the Jets and the Avalanche. The Minnesota Wild also have 2 games in hand on the Jets at this point in time. Dallas is at the top. All these teams have 3 games in hand. The Jets have a game in hand.
That's an amazing comment that you have up there, by the way. THP Power. I have no idea what's wrong with these guys, but we definitely need a team of professionals to work on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. We've reached out for professional help, and the professionals
THP Power
the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is going to be studied in psychiatry classes for years to come.
THP Power also wearing a new some Jets merch courtesy of the contest. So just continue to enter the contest, people. Even though we don't give anything away on Saturday shows, we still advocate that you enter. And we haven't chosen the word. Speaking of which, I haven't chosen the word. I'll have to do it right now. I'll think about it.
Okay, you think about it. We'll go to break. We'll bring in John Mattis, the national hockey writer for thescore.com. As we mentioned, he wrote about Kyle Connor. Talk to him about that. Talk to him about everything going around in the NHL. It's a Saturday morning. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number 2, we're pleased to welcome to the program the national hockey writer from thescore.com. John Mattis, our good friend, joins us on the show. John, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Nice to see you fellas as well. Things are well. Things are busy. We're at that point of the season where, I don't want to say it's the dog days, but it's kind of, we're past the midway point of all that. Okay, what happened in the first half? We haven't quite hit the All-Star game or trade deadline, so it's a bit of a weird period, but it can be good to reflect and talk about big picture topics.
It can also be good to reflect and appreciate those who are otherwise maybe a little less appreciated than they should be. And you did that earlier this week with a great article on thescore.com, an article that we've tweeted out about Winnipeg Jets winger and superstar, unappreciated superstar Kyle Connor. I guess a two-part question. What was the impetus for you writing the article? Sort of why did you think that he deserved the shine as much as he does? And then what did you sort of find out in the course of your reporting on Kyle Connor?
Sure. Well, the first part would be, I get these reports from SportLogic, the analytics company, twice a week, and has a leaderboard of, primary assists, cycle chances, rush chances, etc. And I noticed that Kyle Connor was very high in primary assists, both in total and per game. And I thought he was mostly a sniper. And Winnipeg happened to be coming to Buffalo, which is not too far from my house. So I thought, okay, let's dig into this. Is he actually a better playmaker this year? Did he work on something in his off season? What's going on there? And at the same time, I was like, okay, if there's nothing there, which turned out to be the case, because he said, I don't know why my assists are up. Then I can focus on the fact that this guy is 6th in goals since 2017-18, which is his first full season. So basically his entire career, he's been producing at a really high rate on the goal front. And just the durability there, the sort of he has some flashy traits, but a lot of it is subtle in terms of what he brings to the game. So I just found he was he's just an interesting guy in the universe of these offensive stars that are taking over the NHL, right? I mean, he's, even the biggest diehard Jets fan isn't going to go, oh, he's as good as Matthews or McDavid or Kucherov or whoever. But I think there's a case to be made that he's sort of in that second tier, given his production, what he means to the Jets. So I just wanted to dig into that a little bit. And I know I'm not the first person to say this guy is underrated, but it shocks me to no end just how, I guess, sort of nondescript he is in a lot of ways, but also if we're just talking about what he does on the ice, there's nothing nondescript about it. It's pretty impressive. And so that was sort of my mindset. And I just went around the Jets room, talked to Rick Bowness, talked to Eric Comrie, who was on the Sabres, obviously a former teammate, and just tried to understand, what makes this guy tick. And also, what is it about his game that maybe people are overlooking? So that was the impetus. And at the end of the day, it's kind of a weird thing because, who's deciding who's appreciated, who's deciding who's rated this, that, and the other. But I think he's one guy that we can all agree is in some way, shape, or form flying under the radar, both for his career and then this season. I mean, he's not going to the All-Star game and he's tied for 11th in scoring. And he used to be, tied for 9th and 10th. He's been right in there all season.
And I was going to mention that, John, that's the craziest thing, right? The Jets have 2 players going with Hellebuck being voted in, and Kyle Connor isn't one of them when, aside from a slow start, I mean, he's picked up right where he left off. He's not obviously going to hit, 47 goals, but he could easily hit 40 goals. And it was a great article. And I know a lot of Jets fans love the article because it's not like we've been talking about Kyle Connor being underrated for a year or two. This is going on 4 or 5 years now, right? He was a fantastic scorer when the Jets went on the run in 2018, and he was, earlier in his NHL career, right? And, Dave Minuk has been talking about this for years now. Connor is just as good of a playmaker as he is a goal scorer, and that's really what he's primarily known for, right? With the speed and the release on the power play and everything like that. And I, one of the quotes I love the most was from Todd Woodcroft. He said, the only flash is when he's going by you and you're looking at his jersey flapping in the wind, right? And so it's so true, especially, on 3-on-3 overtime, right? This guy is, right up there with Ehlers and Connor McDavid and some of the fastest guys, in the league. And it might be because of the market, right? Winnipeg, I have no idea, but you're absolutely right. When it comes to skill, I think we would all agree that, he's arguably, top 10 skilled player, in the entire league. So, it's really incredible and great that he's getting some more recognition, from yourself included.
Well, okay, let's break down a few things that you said there. So, first of all, Todd Woodcroft, I assume you guys have had him on your show, but if you haven't, I mean, a quote machine. Like he's legitimately funny, like a funny person. And obviously he knows the game, better than most. He's been in and around the NHL and now the college game for like 30 years. So he's fantastic on that level. And number two, you bring up the 3-on-3 overtime. I mean, right now, Connor is tied with Draisaitl for most game-winning goals with 8. And if you go back again to this 5-year sample of 2017-18, his first full season, and capture that season all the way to now, he's third in game-winning goals. So the consistency is always there, which I think is like, it's kind of boring, right? Consistency. He hasn't had one season when he's had 50 goals. This season, I guess you could point to the assists and go, okay, this is a bit of an anomaly. But generally, he's just been really consistent. And, a part of it is durability. I mean, he's been able to stay in the lineup a lot. Whereas, say, just to use an example, Matthews, I mean, he's missed a bunch of games over his career. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then you mentioned the market. So I find Winnipeg like a really unique market. Maybe there's no market that compares, to be honest, in the NHL. Maybe Ottawa might be a comparable, but you're in Canada. So obviously there's a large and rabid fan base. But compared to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, not only is there less media, there's virtually no, if any, national media. And then there's
John, we definitely have an inferiority complex. There's no doubt about that.
well, and also it's just the size. I mean, like, it's just the facts of, Winnipeg, the metropolitan area. It just doesn't compare to some of these other hubs, right? And Ottawa is like, honestly, it's probably pretty similar, but none of the American teams can sort of have the same vibe of a Canadian market. So there's that, so that kind of keeps them, lower than, say, I don't know, William Nylander or whatever in Toronto. But there's also the fact that he's kind of an unassuming guy. I mean, he's pretty meat and potatoes, likes to hunt and golf and fish. And like what most of his teammates told me was he's not overly serious, but also not overly goofy. Like, very well-liked guy, but he's not exactly like, Mr. Serious, in the gym first and last out. And then also not, making all these one-liners. So there's that. He kind of just fits into the team nicely. Also his frame. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've watched Kyle Connor over the years, it's not that he's been hidden when you're watching the Jets, but he just doesn't stand out. He's not tiny, and he's certainly not big. And he's gotten stronger over the years. He's added muscle. But even when I was in Buffalo, standing beside him, I mean, he's a guy that's in shape, but he's certainly not imposing. So I think that adds on to it too.
It's almost like, when you see Kyle Connor in street clothes, like, you might think he's like a pro surfer as opposed to being like a pro hockey player, right? With that hair.
Well, yeah, he's got great hair, and just like kind of a down to earth guy from Michigan, right? Like he just loves hockey, and he's not in commercials, and he's not trying to put himself out there. And then one thing that me and Todd Woodcroft talked about was his name. I mean, Kyle Connor. It's 2 first names. It's probably a step above John Smith in terms of creativity, but it's not that far from John Smith. Even if you think about, I don't know, David Pasternak, you're going to remember Pasternak, even though he's got David as a first name. It's like, that's a unique last name.
See, John, you just have to add, John, if you just add his middle initial F, then you got KFC, and then you don't forget it.
That's right.
It's funny you guys bring that up because just researching and looking back at some stories written about him, and I was on Reddit in the Jets Reddit community, and there's all this talk about KFC. Yeah. And then, I realized it's probably the F word, and I'm like, but is it, the fast food joint? So I kind of stayed away from it just because I wasn't quite sure what that was all about. Yeah. But I did find that funny where like Jets fans are, they're behind this guy. They love this guy.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Well, you talk about how underrated he is, John. He's not even the best Connor on the team in terms of importance with Connor Hellebuyck. So, you think about the Connors in the league, McDavid, Hellebuyck, Kyle, 3 pretty damn good Connors. So it stands to reason the third one might not necessarily get as much attention. But I mean, you saw it in person in Buffalo, as you said, when you went down to the game. I mean, the game-winning goal, what he did to the goaltender, and I can't remember who, I think it was Jukka-Pekka
Luukkonen.
Yeah, Luukkonen, sorry.
Just say UPL, Drew.
Yeah, UPL. It's too confusing. But I mean, he just deked him out of his jock, as the old expression went, for the game-winning goal. I mean, that's just got to be intimidating for a goalie to see him coming in, knowing that he can pick a corner if he chooses to, or he can deke you out of your shorts to get a game winner, as he did against Buffalo.
Yeah, just to circle back on being overshadowed a little bit in Jets land, before there was Dustin Byfuglien, big personality, booming hits. So we got lost in the shuffle with Byfuglien in that era. Patrick Laine was a bit of a roller coaster tenure, and he's got the flash of that incredible shot, and he's got that personality when he's joking around with the media. You got Scheifele, Ehlers, like you said, Hellebuck in terms of what he's done over the years. It's just easy for Connor to fly under the radar, even in his own market, even though you could argue he's right up there in terms of MVP conversation over the last 5 years. And then, Drew, just to talk a little bit more about his playing style, Rick Bowness, who's been in the NHL circles for literally 40 years, and if you go back with his playing years, it's probably closer to 50. He said Connor's got one of the best releases he's ever seen, whether he's coaching, playing, and that's not exactly surprising, especially to Jets fans, but I think it says something. And that wrist shot is his calling card. Obviously his quickness is right up there as well, but after that it kind of tails off in terms of the flash, in terms of the appeal. He's a give and go guy, he's a cycle guy, he's a really good forechecker, but not in a ground and pound way. He's kind of beating you to the puck, or he's stripping the puck from you. So again, the overlooked aspect comes in on so many levels. And even if you look at his defensive game, which is not very good, I think, say, if you compare him to Pierre-Luc Dubois might get a little more love, a little more publicity, because people are enamored by not only the size and the personality, but he's got some good two-way effects. So Connor, there's just so much there in terms of why he's lost in the shuffle.
Saturday morning, you're live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. National hockey writer for The Score, John Mattis, is our guest.
John, we do like to talk about the Jets here on this program. That's what our focus generally is. But I'm going to cast my eyes, like much of the hockey world, out west and to the mess that's in Vancouver. And I just want your thoughts. We kind of opened the show talking about what's going on with the Canucks and Bruce Boudreau and the way they're handling it right now. And to be honest with you, if you're Rick Tocchet and he seems to be the presumptive next head coach, even though they currently have a head coach, do you want to be going to that dumpster fire that is Vancouver? I mean, what are your thoughts on what's going on in Canuck land?
Well, I'd say on the Tocchet angle, there's only 32 jobs, right? And he's been waiting for that next job while working for TNT. He's been very open about the fact that the broadcasting thing is more temporary than permanent. That said, of all situations, it's top 5 worst or bottom 5 worst, whatever the phrase would be there. As far as not only, the fan base loving this Bruce Boudreau character that's about to exit stage right, but also the roster you're inheriting, and reports out there, I believe it was Farhan Lauji said, part of the impetus for bringing Tocchet in, kind of this more old school, defensive guy, and someone who's got some clout as far as, how he played the game, is to settle down JT Miller. Just to, kind of get him on the right track in terms of attitude, in terms of, defensive zone coverage, etc. That's a huge red flag to me. That's
it's that's the main reason why you're bringing him in.
It's obviously it's not, but if that's even, in your top 5 of reasons or priorities, that's a concern. They just signed JT Miller to an 8-year deal. And it's already a bit of an albatross contract. So there's that, the whole Bruce Boudreau situation, which obviously everyone's watching from afar and shaking their head. It's a little cruel what's going on, and just a beloved character in the league. And this isn't his fault, really. I don't know about you guys, but I don't look at what's happening with the Canucks and go, this is a coaching problem. So it's a little weird that they wouldn't just fire him. If they didn't think he was the guy long-term, fire him, promote one of his assistants, and keep going that downward spiral in terms of heading towards the draft lottery. So it's a little strange in that sense, I'll be honest, but maybe they really love Tocchet and they think this is their chance. So perhaps that explains the timing of it all. But big picture in terms of the roster there's some, as Jim Rutherford said, there's some major surgery needed, but where I lose him is with the timeline that he's hoping for, 1 to 3 years that they're going to turn this thing around. And he's sort of,
they've been John, they've been 1 to 3 years away for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and I get where Jim Rutherford is coming from when he says, like, I wasn't part of the last regime, so I shouldn't be sort of, I'm paraphrasing him, but I shouldn't be sort of looped in with Jim Benning. But it's a problem with the organization where, squeaking into the playoffs is apparently the main goal, and that shouldn't be the main goal anywhere. And they've been just trying to band-aid over mistakes again and again and again. I honestly was a huge fan of the Rutherford hiring when it happened, because I thought, oh, this is a guy who's actually quite different than Jim Benning. And then he brings over Patrick Allvin as his GM, and you go, this seems like a pretty good tandem. I mean, it's been the opposite, though. It's been the same old story, the same old flawed plan that Jim Benning had, where it's a lot of short-term thinking. And even, one thing I wrote about the other day was Andrei Kuzmenko was mentioned in the press conference that Rutherford had, in the sense that he said, oh, we're negotiating with this guy. We're hoping to assign him to an extension. And I'm just thinking, of all players that you have to use it as a trade chip, he's probably at the top of the list. He is a 26-year-old rookie that's really cheap right now, that a contender can bring in easily. So you have a big market for him, and you've decided that we're going to add another contract to our core that's aging, a contract that honestly probably won't look great. This guy's having an incredible year as a 26-year-old rookie. I don't expect him to continue what he's doing at this level. So you're going to handcuff yourself again with another bad contract to add with Ekman Larson, JT Miller, Connor Garland. You can go up and down the list. It's very short-term focused, yet the sort of messaging or the overall plan, quote unquote, is to not be short-term. So it's a very confusing situation out in Vancouver, and I hope they put Bruce out of his misery, so to speak, sooner than later.
Well, the common denominator across all the different regimes in Vancouver is Francisco Aquilini. So, I mean, I think that what you're seeing,
he owns the team, though, Drew.
Yeah, thank you, Ezra. I'm aware of what his role is. I appreciate that. But I think what you're seeing is the importance of a good culture in an organization and how that starts at the top. Because I believe, Rutherford and Allvin are I assume handcuffed to some degree by the edict coming down from ownership. And when ownership is lousy, this is what you get. You get these organizations that are in this state of almost constant chaos. And I mean, you look at all the sort of the bad organizations in this league right now, and I think the common denominator for a lot of them is questionable ownership, because it starts at the top. I mean, there's a great book, I'm not sure if you've read it, John, about the New England Patriots, and it talks about the dynamic between the owner Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, and then Tom Brady when he was their quarterback. And it talks about how they were synchronicity at all levels, whereas in Vancouver and in a lot of other bad organizations, you see that there's just divides and chaos and not a realistic viewpoint of what the franchise is and what the team is. And I think the Vancouver Canucks are a great test case for that right now. A study that you can say, look at this disaster. What is the core of the disaster? Bad ownership, in my estimation.
Yeah. And when you're the owner, I mean, it's your team. So, technically you can do whatever you want. But I think history has shown us, whether it's the Patriots or Tampa Bay Lightning, the best owners in sports have, they're in the room, so to speak. They're involved, but they trust their sports people. So whether that's football operations with the Patriots or hockey operations with the Lightning there, because it's kind of one of those things where also you can't look at it through the lens of like a normal business. I mean, you have to spend enormous amounts of money to upgrade facilities, to attract free agents. You need to, buy players out who you just signed, a year ago. You need to make all these really like moves that are counter to good business, because it's just a different economic system. And you need to have that in place. You need to have that mentality. And you also need to just understand that there's certain timelines you need to follow. You need to, I think if I were a new owner, a billionaire who bought a pro sports franchise, I think I would get to work on studying, how have these dynasties been built, and try to take myself out of the moment, take myself out of the emotions of watching your team every day, and whatnot. And you just gotta, as lame as it sounds, because it's kind of a cliche now, but you gotta trust the process. And out in Vancouver, I suppose you could say they have a process, but it's not aligned with winning, with sustainability. And I think the problem with that mentality, the way that they're operating, is that, especially in a market like Vancouver, people are starting to tune them out, or that if they haven't yet, they are going to be soon. And, a lot of markets in the NHL can be seen as sort of bulletproof, especially in Canada, where there's always going to be a really strong base. But there comes a time when people are fed up. I mean, it sort of happened with the Leafs before Shanahan came in. And, even though the playoff success hasn't been there in Toronto, you can't deny that whether it's the MLSE group, Bell and Rogers, and their lack of involvement seemingly in the day-to-day, but the financial might that they have, that's fantastic. And they trust their president. They trust their GM. And I think that's a lot of what it comes down to. The day-to-day meddling, it never works out well.
I think, John, you'd agree that probably the best thing for the Canucks right now, Bruce Boudreau's situation aside, because I think we all agree that they have handled that extremely poorly. I think the best thing for the Canucks is to start, rebuilding, right? Like start, make those decisions, trade Bo Horvat, trade Brock Besser, start moving on here, because you're most likely not going to be in the, Connor Bedard sweepstakes. You're definitely not going to be like a bottom 3 or a bottom 5 team. It's just too hard to do that. But I think, they need to, as you said, stop thinking about, just squeaking into the playoffs and start thinking about, like, how do we get this, really going the right way? Because the last few years have been really difficult for Canucks fans, and it probably is starting to be reflected in attendance and everything like that. But I wanted to go back east and talk about the Montreal Canadiens, because just saw that the Score posted that Cole Caulfield is going to be out for the season. And obviously, the Jets and Habs played last week. With the Caulfield injury, and you couple that with all the other players, Slavkovsky's out for 3 months, even though I think you'd agree that maybe he shouldn't have been playing up in the NHL. But, they've got a lot of injuries there. Brendan Gallagher, the list goes on. Sean Monahan. But if the for sale sign isn't already up in Montreal, I mean, should it be up? And how quickly are we going to start to see, the players get dealt? Because I imagine a lot of teams are looking at the Habs right now and saying, okay, like let's do some deals here.
Well, I think we can agree that they're a pretty smart organization. The integrity is there. Like, I think they're. I mean, this is almost perfect for them that these guys are injured, and I wonder how much of the direction of the team, the timeline of the team, where this is clearly a long rebuild, factored into, say, Cole Caulfield opting for surgery. A lot of times, right, these guys can play through stuff. I have no idea what his specific situation is, but say with Patrick Kane right now, he could potentially get surgery, but he's deciding if he wants to push his chips in the middle of the table as far as going to a contender. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that I think that they're identifying this period, this time, as a perfect chance to get everyone healthy for next year. And then when I look at the roster in terms of trade chips, I mean, a guy like David Savard is going to be sought after. Michael Matheson, maybe. Jake Allen, I don't know what their plans are for him in the future. So I wouldn't say that they have, because they're kind of in this this test period, I would call it, because like even a guy like Sean Monahan, who, like you said, injured now, I wasn't sure if they were going to trade him, keep him, because it was a bit of a reclamation project. I guess we'll never find out until the offseason. But they're in this. They're kind of in a unique scenario where they're certainly not trying to win. They're certainly rebuilding, but they acquired these projects that Martin St. Louis clearly wouldn't mind seeing through. So, like I said, I mean, Edmondson, Savard, Matheson, maybe Dodonov and Hoffman up front. All these players are presumably not part of the long-term future there. So I mean, it would be a no-brainer. They're one of those teams, maybe there's a handful of them in the league where it's so obvious what they're doing. It's so obvious that they're going to be sellers at the deadline, that these injuries just, I guess, put an exclamation point on that.
John Mattis is the national hockey writer for The Score. He's a good friend of the program. John, always appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We'll get together again real soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And it's nice to see the Jets do well. I know that they, last 2 games they've lost, but like, great market, great fans. You guys are fantastic to talk with. And, they're near the top of the Western Conference. I mean, when was the last time we could say that midway through the season? So it'll be interesting to see how it all develops.
That it will be. We'll talk about it again later on this year, John. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
John.
Cheers, John.
John Mattis, good friend of the program, joining us. Quick update from Ottawa, where the Jets morning skate is underway. No line rushes today. So as to how the line.
By the way, Drew, is this update from Jeff Ottawa Hamilton?
Yeah, well, you have was it you that have him being born there or something, or growing up there?
It's nice that Jeff could go back to his hometown.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got family. I was right. He went to Carleton, which is in Ottawa, and he's got family in Ottawa.
Okay, so do I. It doesn't mean I was ever born, and I actually lived there, so it doesn't mean it was my hometown.
That's fair.
In any event,
I've already acknowledged I made a mistake, Drew.
And it's our job to continue to throw it in your face.
I gotta say, guys, it's going to be really nice for Kyle Connor to play, in front of his hometown fans.
Yeah, no, Drew. Look, you got to call out a mistake when it's made, and listen, Mr. Colin Mindell. I agree that's something.
Dave, Jeff Hamilton was not born in Ottawa. Okay, let's just move on.
Was he born in Hamilton?
Yes, he was born in Hamilton. Actually, they named the city out of him, but before he was born, it wasn't called Hamilton. It was called the Steel City. Then they changed the name to Hamilton as a result. Anyways, as I was saying, there were no line rushes this morning for the Winnipeg Jets. Logan Stanley is out of his non-contact jersey. Mason Appleton is still in his. It doesn't look like there's any sign of Dylan Samberg on the ice. Nobody has said anything about Dylan Samberg, so I have to believe that he's not healthy enough to get back in the lineup tonight. But we will find out.
Some people saying, maybe Kyle Capobianco goes in. I don't necessarily know that's going to happen, but really,
I'd be surprised.
That's the only change that could take place. Or, of course, Carson Kuhlman going into the lineup for someone. I mean, you'd think it might be Axel Jonsson-Fjällby or Sam Gagner, because I believe it was Gagner that was a healthy scratch before that, right, Dave?
Yeah.
So another thing, but most likely the lineup is going to look similar to the game against the Leafs.
Well, it's interesting because Kuhlman, before practice, it was Axel Jonsson-Fjällby who was the extra forward, and it was Kuhlman who was in the practice lines. But then ultimately they ended up going with Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and scratching Kuhlman. So a little site called legalcurve.com. The moment this show ends, which is coming up, we'll have the update for you there. Sure enough, we've already given away tickets to the Moose game this afternoon for the one lucky fan. It's amazing. I put it on Twitter, Ezzy. Helps by you giving me a retweet, but like that, the illegal curve zone tickets are gone. So we've given away the tickets for today and tomorrow's game. And we'll have more for the Marlies series next week. I don't know if we have both games, but I'll be giving those away later in the week.
In any event, all your latest, and of course the audio from Jets head coach Rick Bowness available on
video, actually, too.
Video, yes, on legalcurve.com. Sam, you want to come say goodbye? We're wrapping up the show.
Bye.
You want to say bye? Say bye to everybody.
Sam, can I come over and play Nintendo Wii?
Ezra wants to know if you can come play the Nintendo Switch.
That's the Switch. Why do you keep calling it the Wii?
You can. He says you can. That's nice of him. Hey. Isn't that nice of
Sam? I'll bring Ruben over too, and we can play.
Sam, later after the show ends, we're going to learn about the concept of restraining order.
No.
Wow,
that's it.
Me and Sam are cool.
I'm sure you are.
Sam's my buddy.
Sam? He's a good boy. Yes, he is. In any event, we want to say thank you to Eric Dubois and John Mattis for joining us earlier today on the show. In case you missed any of it, it will be available. The podcast shortly thereafter, the instant replay on YouTube. Later tonight, 9 o'clock. Tonight, just before 9 o'clock, the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on our YouTube channel following the Jets and the Ottawa Senators. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Do everything that you're supposed to do as we tell you to do here to give us the support that we so appreciate.
Dan, do you think the Jets are going to win tonight?
Do you think the Jets are going to win? Ezra wants to know.
I think so.
He thinks so, yeah. He thinks the Jets
are
going to win.
I think so too, Sam.
Okay, there you go. A big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the Saturday show, the post-game show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Frosty Winnipeg has it up there. Mike Cronin tonight at Rumors. Not a ton of tickets left. RumorsComedyClub.com. Linden Market Dental Center. Zappia Group Realty. Betway. Tough Duck. Boston Pizza. Seagram's. The Seagram's a shot of the game coming up later on. So be sure to have your drinks ready for you when we do that. Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and the Keg. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. We'll see you later tonight. Thanks for watching. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey